Now, when you pay off those credit cards, stop using them. Do not go back into more credit card debt because this is going to keep you trapped in the cycle of debt. Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. Hi, my name is Brooke, and on this channel, we like to talk about all things personal finances and how we can get better with our money. So if that's something that's interesting to you, please make sure to subscribe and get notified every time I put out a video. Today, in this video, I am continuing my financial literacy for beginners series because we are still in the month of April, which is National Financial Literacy Month. And so for this part of our series, we are going to be talking about debt payoff. Yes, I know that that sounds scary. Debt is definitely something that is a little taboo to talk about, especially because everything just seems to be getting more and more expensive, and people are going to have to take on more and more debt to just live a normal life. So, in this video, I want to talk to you about different strategies that you can use in order to pay off debt. We're going to talk about a little bit about the mindset of paying off debt and how you can do it in a sustainable way where you're still meeting your goals, but you're also feeling like you don't have to be in this shame cycle of being in debt. So, first, let's talk about the two main strategies that people use for debt payoff. This one is actually recommended in Dave Ramsey's Baby Steps, and it is the debt snowball. So, the debt snowball is just simply paying off the smallest balance first and then rolling that payment, an extra payment that you're making, into the next smallest one so that it is like a snowball that keeps building and building until you knock out all of your debt. So, for example, let's say you had 3 credit cards with balances on them. One of them had a balance of $100, another has a balance of $400, and the last one has a really big balance of $1,000. So, what you would do in order to pay off this debt is you would pay towards each of these cards the minimum. So if the minimums for each card was $50 in this case, then you would pay the $50 minimums to each of those cards so that you don't have any defaults or anything like that. But then you would put any of your extra money towards that smallest credit card of $100. And so whatever this could be, however much money you could scrounge up, this would be what you send towards that. So let's say you had an extra $25 to put towards that credit card that has $100. So that first month you would put $75 towards your credit card number 1, and to credit card number 2 and credit card number 3, you would just continue to pay the minimums of $50. So in total for debt, you would be sending $175 towards debt. And so then once you were able to pay off that $100 balance, which in this case, if you had $75 that you could send to it each month, you'd pay that off relatively quickly, 2 to 3 months time. Then what you would do is you would start sending that $75 to the second highest balance of $400. So you would be sending the minimum payment of $50 and the extra $75, you'd be rolling that up together to make your snowball larger. And so the reason why people recommend the debt snowball is because of the psychological factors that go into the debt snowball. When you are able to make those really quick wins and pay off those small balances, you're able to really see your debt go down in a way that takes less time than if you were to tackle the biggest debt first. And so for a lot of people, that is really motivating to them in their debt payoff journey because they really need those quick wins in order to feel like they're doing good on their debt journey. So, if that is something that you kind of struggle with, you really need that validation that you are making strides towards your goals, maybe think about doing the debt snowball. You will pay more in interest over time because your largest balance will continue to accrue interest as you work on those smaller balances until you start paying it off. But overall, this is a really good strategy to help you become debt free. Now, let's talk about the second main way that people like to pay off their debt, which is known as the debt avalanche. So, the debt avalanche method is you take all of the debt that you have and you list it from highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. So, in the debt avalanche, you're trying to minimize the amount of interest that you are paying by tackling your highest interest debt first. So let's go back to that credit cards example that I did earlier with your 3 credit cards of balances $100, $400, and $1,000. In this case, if you're doing the debt avalanche, you're not caring as much about the balances, but you're caring more about the interest rates. So let's say that the $400 credit card has the highest balance of 30%. In the debt avalanche, you are paying off the $400 balance first because it has the highest interest rate. Now, if you still have the same amount of money extra per month that you could send to that on top of the minimum payment of $25, you are still going to be sending $75 to that highest interest card and then paying the minimums of $50 each to those other cards. So in total, the amount of money that you're spending towards debt each month is the same of $175 spread out across your 3 cards. With that though, you are going to be saving a little bit of interest because you're going to be hitting that debt that has the highest interest rate first. And so for people who like to optimize and think about it in terms of mathematical terms, the debt avalanche is a good way for people to go about doing that, especially if you know that you are disciplined and you don't need those quick wins. Again, with both the debt avalanche and the debt snowball, you are continuing to make your minimum monthly payments for all of your debt. Do not stop making your minimum monthly payments on your debt if you have it. Because if you don't make your minimum monthly payments, you could go into default on your loans, on your credit cards, those kinds of things. And you always want to prevent going into default. Because if you default on your stuff, then that's when those loans or those debts that you have will go into collections after a period of time. And once it's in collections, it's really going to hurt your credit score. And so even if you can only make the minimum payments on your debts and then maybe $100 extra per month, maybe $200 extra per month towards your debt, that's still better than not paying the minimums at all. So I always want you to remember, always pay your minimums on any debt that you have. And I know for some people that can sound really daunting, especially if you have lots of different lines of credit and your minimums are maybe adding up to over $1,000 a month. That seems really scary for people. I really don't want you to have to default on your loans. And so if you do feel like you are underwater in all of these loans, especially if they are credit card loans, then what you could look into doing is consolidating your credit. So there are a couple of ways that you can actually consolidate your credit that can help you with this. So the first way is to get a personal loan. So let's say you owe $10,000 on your different credit cards and they all have interest rates of 20+%. That is a lot, and that's going to take a while to pay off. So what you could do is you could go and apply for a loan of $10,000 from a bank, from a credit union, anywhere like that. And hopefully what you're doing there is getting a better interest rate that's less than 20%. So let's say you are able to apply for a personal loan and get a $10,000 personal loan for 10%. So then you would use that personal loan money that you get to pay off those credit cards. Now, when you pay off those credit cards, stop using them. Do not go back into more credit card debt because this is going to keep you trapped in the cycle of debt. So you don't want to do that if you go down this route of consolidating your loans into a personal loan. When you pay off those credit cards, freeze them, take them off your Apple Pay, Google Pay, out of your Google Chrome extension, wherever it is, just delete it and don't use them because right now you are still paying off debt that you accrued on credit cards. So you haven't built up the skills that you need in order to make sure that you don't get back into credit card debt. And so a lot of people fall into that trap of they get a personal loan, they pay off their credit cards, now they've got all this credit limit back, and they go spend and max out their credit cards again. I don't want you to do that. I want you to be smart with your money. I want you to say, hey, I'm getting this personal loan so that I can make my life better in the future. And then when I know that I've started those financial habits that are going to be healthy for me, then maybe I can look at reusing credit cards again and always paying off those balances in full every month. But for right now, as I'm working towards paying off my personal loan, I'm not going to be spending more on my credit cards. Another option that you can do is what is known as a balance transfer to another credit card that has 0% fees. Now, when you do this, you need to make sure that they also have balance transfer rules that say that you don't have any fees on that money that you're transferring over from one card to another. Because if you do that, that's going to cut into any of the potential savings that you're doing by putting it on a 0% transfer card. Another thing you also have to note if you're doing a balance transfer to a different card with 0% interest is you need to know the term length that 0% interest is going to be for. So most of the time, this is going to be 15 to 24 months. When you're doing the balance transfer, you want to be absolutely sure that you can pay off your balance within that 0% interest window. Because if you don't pay off that balance within the 0% interest window, what could happen is that when you get to the end of those 24 months, you could owe the credit card back interest on all of the money that you transferred over. So all of those months of zero interest, they could add that interest onto once that time changes from 0% to the regular interest rate. And so I don't want that to happen to you. I don't want you to be paying all that extra interest because you weren't able to pay off the card in full by the time that the 0% transfer ended. So if you're going to go that route, be careful and run your numbers and make sure you know absolutely that you can pay it off within those 15 to 24 months. If you can't do that based on how much money you have in your budget each month to go towards debt, maybe the best way to go about it is doing a personal loan to consolidate those credit cards. But what I never want you to do is get into a trap of my credit card is now at $0. Now I have all of this credit, maybe $500, $2,500 limit that is now available for me to go and spend again. So really what I want you to do is I want you to get out of that cycle of continuing to pay the credit card companies, because there are a lot of ways that we can justify to ourselves why we should still be using our credit cards. For example, credit card points. Now, I myself love a good travel hack. I love using my credit cards to rack up points and to go on free travel and to put it towards hotel rooms, to put it towards airfare, all that kind of stuff. It sounds so fun. Free vacation for everyone, right? Wrong. If you are paying any cent of interest to credit cards, you are not getting any benefit out of your credit card points if you're paying interest. Because if you think about it logically, your credit card points are worth literally 1 cent a piece, 1 to 2 cents. And if you get anything higher than 2 cents per point, you're doing really well. And if you think about that, 10 cents is literally nothing if you are carrying a balance on your credit card and paying 30% interest. You're never going to make up your interest payments to your credit cards by racking up your 1 to 2 cent points. So if you're in credit card debt, don't even think about credit card points at all. They are not benefiting you. You are being taken advantage of by the credit card companies. Now that I've talked about a couple of the different strategies that we can pay off our debt, ways to consolidate it, let's talk a little bit more about the mindset that goes into making sure your debt payoff journey is successful. The first thing that I want you to remember is that this is a marathon, not a sprint. It is not going to be an overnight thing that you are going to pay off your credit cards, you're going to pay off your loans. It's just not going to be feasible because you have life to live. You have groceries to pay for. You've got rent. You've got your utilities. You've got things like that that you have to also make sure that you are paying for. And even with people who have an extra $1,000 to $2,000 a month that they can put towards debt, it's still going to take them several months to get to the finish line. So you really need to make sure that you are pacing yourself just like a marathon runner paces themselves. They're not doing a 100-meter sprint, so they're not going all out at the beginning. They're going at a sustainable pace. So when you're thinking about paying off your debt, think about it like a marathon. Secondly, I don't want you to deprive yourself. When you are in debt payoff, a lot of people go scorched earth, which means that they cut out everything non-essential. They only pay the bare bones. They don't think about, oh, maybe in a few months I'm going to really be burnt out because I miss all of the things that brought my life joy. So what I want you to do instead is to start determining what is actually important to you and make room for that in your budget. If you like to go out to eat, if that's something that is a value to you, what I would say is if you're in a debt payoff journey, maybe think about how many times per week you're going out to eat. And let's say if you're going out 4 to 5 times a week, that's going to really cut into the extra amount of money that you can send towards your debt. And on this debt payoff journey, we need to have balance. So instead of maybe going out 4 times a week, maybe what you do instead is you say, hey, we're going to go out once a week. We're going to budget that in. And so for our family, if we have a family of 4, we're going to say we are going to set aside $75 each week for that. And that's the only amount of spending that we're going to be doing on eating out. And then all of the rest of that money that we put towards eating out, we're going to send that to our debt. So we still get to indulge in the things we enjoy, but we're doing it with a plan. We have a plan because we want to be debt free and we want to make sure that we are not in the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck and being beholden to our minimum debt payments. So don't go scorched earth. Don't try and only live off beans and rice, but really find a nice middle ground where your values are aligning with what you want out of your life, but you're still being financially responsible and paying off your debts. And thirdly, I want you to know that it is okay. If you got into debt, it is okay. This system is set up to make it easy for you to get into debt, especially if you come from lower incomes and you just don't have that financial literacy foundation to get you to where you want to be. It's very easy. I remember when I was a freshman in college, they were handing out credit cards to basically any freshman on campus. And for an 18-year-old that has less impulse control than a fully grown adult with a fully grown brain, like that is so dangerous, especially if they're like, oh, your limit is $3,000. Now, $3,000 might not seem like a lot of money, but when you're in college, you most of the time are going to college full time and you're not being able to make a lot of money. So for me, example, I was only working an on-campus job. I worked 10 hours a week for minimum wage. So I was bringing in peanuts. And so for me to have a $3,000 limit and then be all like, oh, now I can spend $3,000 on my limited salary that I was making would take years to pay that off because I would be drowning. So that's one way that the system is rigged is they get you in early, young. They say, build up your credit score, make all of this stuff. So then when you're like 22 and right out of college, you can go and buy your dream house. No, they're trying to trap you into the debt cycle. Do not let that happen to you. If you did get trapped into that debt cycle young, take a deep breath and know that it is okay. Know that that is not a failure of you. It is the way our systems have been set up to make sure that you get into credit card debt, that you get into any sort of kind of debt. They want you to be in debt because that's how they make their money. And they're corporations just like anybody else. They're working for their shareholders and they are showing this is my record profit this year so that my shareholders can be happy. They are not in the business of making you more financially literate. They're not in the business of helping you, so don't help line their pockets, okay? So if you did that, it's okay. We recognize that, we understand, and in the future, we are going to do our best so that we are not taken advantage of by the system. But just give yourself grace and know that it's okay. Our systems are in place to keep us trapped in debt. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really hope that this video was encouraging to you and helpful for you. I know that I've got a lot of new subscribers around here, a lot of new faces, so welcome. I really appreciate you being here. It helps my channel out so much when you subscribe, leave comments, and do all that stuff. It just really helps me to continue to want to make this content for you all and to help you. And if this video can help one person, that is what I'm here for. And so I really appreciate you all. As always, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye, y'all.